What a parallelogram is. So, a parallelogram means that it is a quadrilateral, meaning a four-sided figure with both pairs of opposite sides parallel. So that means the opposite sides are AB and BC, so those ones are parallel. And AD and BC are parallel, those are our opposite sides. That is the definition of a parallelogram. So let's construct a parallelogram. I'm not going to do it the way that it has up here because it didn't work well last hour, so I want to try something different with you guys. So on the next slide, so flip to the next page where it says construct a parallelogram. Do this. We'll get to your pink sheets in a second. What did you say?
You waving the sticker on is a little bit.
I know, isn't it?
Just put a nail on a broomstick and just,
I'm jumping
out. It's like
gracious.
Just beat some kids.
No. All right. So we will start by drawing line segment AB.
Every time you got a math problem wrong on the quiz, you got like you break one of the
No.
zeros.
Guys, draw line segment AB with point C off of it. Like I said, I'm not following the steps that are up there. That's a different way of doing it. I wouldn't make AB that long because it'll be hard to copy that. So if you keep it at reasonable distance, don't make it forever long.
Yeah.
Did you get the construction portfolio stuff either? Okay. As I'm going through this, we'll do that. All right. Then you will connect A to C. So that's the first thing you're going to do here is connect A to C with your AB. So this is what we have so far. We know that in a parallelogram, opposite sides are parallel. We also know that opposite sides are congruent. So we're going to use the fact that opposite sides are congruent to construct this parallelogram. So what you are going to do is you're going to take your compass. You guys need to grab a compass if you don't have one, or share with somebody around you. Take your compass and measure the length from A to B. Why don't you just share the same one that he has?
That was the joke we're making.
Oh.
Messing around.
So you measure the length from A to B with your compass. You measure the length from A to B with your compass, put the sharp end on C, and draw an arc.
Perhaps.
Put your sharp end on C and draw a good arc there. So measure the length from A to B, move that to C, go sharp end to C and draw an arc. Don't be listening to your phone, watching TV on your phone, and then ask me what I did. That's what somebody did last hour. It made me really angry.
Did you break their fingers?
No, I did not break their fingers. It's just really frustrating. Okay, so again, swing that arc from C. At this point, you're now going to go ahead and measure from A to C. So you're going to measure from A to C, that distance. So measure from A to C, that distance. Put your sharp end on B and swing an arc that intersects the other arc.
It'd be really funny to like watch you just go off on a
Oh, again, that would not be funny. So this is going to be point D.
hilarious. It would be hilarious.
And then you can connect your points to create your parallelogram. 1 second.
You mentioned
I'm going to come around in a second to help you guys out.
Yeah, Pops.
Please stop talking, guys.
Sorry.
So we know opposite sides are parallel. So we have AB parallel to CD, and AC is parallel to DB. Okay, I'm going to walk around. If you need me, let me know. I measured from here to here.
It exists.
And then you move over to See that now? Questions? Other questions as I'm walking around to help you guys out before we get into the note part?
What? Why? Yeah, I know. Now he says,
I've got to buy an app.
oh yeah,
Anybody else? Alright, so now you can do the parallelogram construction in your construction portfolio.
already did it.
So that is your third one. The definition of a parallelogram was that very first page that we talked about. So the definition is on that very first page. So when it asks you for that, it was on the very first slide. All right, when you're ready, please flip so we can start talking about the properties. Again, make sure you have your pink sheet out because we're going to be adding some stuff to that. Make sure you get the ones that are checked on Hannah's on yours. All right, so let's get started with some of the theorems and the properties of a parallelogram. If you have your compass and it's not yours or my straight edge, you can hand it to me as I'm walking around because you won't need that anymore. So if you have a compass or a straight edge that is not yours, just give that to me as I'm walking around so that I can put those away so I don't keep losing them.
We need our pink sheets.
Your pink sheets is what we're about to fill out in a second here. Do you need this anymore? All right, guys. So, let's start with some of the theorems that we have here. So, opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. So, if I label this A, B, C, D, opposite sides are congruent. So, AB is congruent to DC, and AD is congruent to BC. Thank you. What a mess. All right. Consecutive angles that follow one another are supplementary. The reason for this is because they are consecutive interior angles. Remember, opposite sides are parallel. So if this is a transversal, angle B and angle C are consecutive interior angles, and consecutive interior angles add to 180. We also know that these sides are parallel, which means that if this is a transversal, D and C are consecutive interior angles. So the measure of angle D plus the measure of angle C equals 180. So consecutive interior angles are supplementary. So all of these angles, one that follows the next, add to 180. The next thing we know is that opposite angles are congruent. So angles across from each other are congruent. So angle A is congruent to angle C. And angle B is congruent to angle D. Finally, if there is one right angle, all of the angles are 90 degrees because opposite angles are congruent, which would force that to be 90 degrees, and consecutive angles add to 180, which forces those to be 90 degrees. So that's why. So let's go through our pink sheet real quick. There's a few that we haven't talked about yet that I'm going to have you mark as well. Okay, are both pairs of opposite sides parallel? We're in that very first column. Are both pairs of opposite sides parallel? Yes. Okay, that first one needs to be marked for parallelograms. Is only one, exactly one pair of opposite sides parallel? Only one pair?
No.
Nope, both pairs are. So that is not marked. Does it tell you anything about the diagonals being perpendicular?
No.
No. Are our diagonals congruent just by looking at this? From A to D, does that look like the same distance from B to C? Doesn't it seem like it's going to take a longer distance to get from here to here than it would from here to here? So they are not congruent. So that one's not true. But the diagonals do bisect each other. We'll talk about that in the later slide. So in the parallelogram, you should so far have both pairs of opposite sides are parallel and diagonals bisect each other. Does it tell you anything about the diagonals bisecting the angles? And it does not, so that's not one. Both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. Are opposite sides congruent? So that one is true. So you should have three things marked now. You should have both pairs of opposite sides are parallel, diagonals bisect each other, and both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. Which means that exactly one pair of opposite sides as being congruent does not make sense.
No.
All sides are congruent.
No.
No. Both pairs of opposite angles are congruent. Are opposite angles congruent?
Yes.
Yeah, so that one is true. So exactly one does not make sense then. Does it? And all angles, are all angles congruent?
No.
No. How about consecutive angles are supplementary? Do consecutive angles add to 180?
Yes.
Yes, they do. Each diagonal separates the shape into two congruent triangles. So this is one diagonal. Notice opposite sides are congruent and they share this diagonal. They are congruent by side, side, side. You remember that? The same applies for if I would draw this in. Again, this diagonal would be again another side, side, side. So that one is true. And we don't know opposite angles are not supplementary. We know they are congruent. So you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things marked for parallelograms. You should have 6 things marked for parallelograms. 6 things marked for parallelograms. Make sure you're looking at the people around you and you have the same ones. You're good. If you want to check your pink sheet at any point, I do have mine up here all the time. So you can always check yours to see if you have the same thing I have, since I'm doing that verbally. All right, you guys can put the pink sheet off to the side, so let's start using these properties and theorems. Okay, so in parallelogram ABCD, the measure of angle B is 32. CD is 80 inches. And BC is 15 inches. So what is the measure of angle C, and how do you know that? What is the measure of angle C and how do you know that? How can I find the measure of angle C? What did you say? How do you know that, Tucker?
You subtract 180.
Yeah, you're right. So the measure of angle B plus the measure of angle C are supplementary, so they are equal to 180, which means you have 32 plus the measure of angle C equals 180, which means the measure of angle C is 148 degrees. So I'm going to be writing things down and showing you guys things as to why that's the case. A lot of kids ask me, do I have to write that? Well, I would write it on your notes so you know where these numbers came from, but on your homework, if it doesn't say to explain, you don't need to. How do I find AD? How can I find AD? What do I know that helps me find AD? Brandon?
You know it's 15. Opposite sides are congruent.
Opposite sides are congruent, which means that AD is congruent to BC. And BC is 15, so that means that this is 15 inches as well. The measure of angle D is the same as angle B. Good job, Corey. So the measure of angle D is congruent to the measure of angle B, which means that this is also 32 degrees because opposite angles are congruent. Okay, get that stuff written down. And then we will move on to the next one. If you have questions, please let me know. Okay, so it says find the value of each. So I don't care which one you decide to do, just let me know which one you're going to do. So Cameron, which one do you want to find? Okay, how are you going to find Y? Equals what? No. Y plus 18 does not equal 180. What do you know about opposite sides of a parallelogram? If they are the same, so opposite sides are congruent. What goes into 18 and 4? 2, so that's 9/2. I prefer improper fractions. If obviously this is not a rounded decimal, that's fine, but I would prefer an improper fraction. Landon, how would I find x?
4x plus 2x minus 6 equals 180.
Perfect. Consecutive angles are supplementary. So you did a fantastic job there. So he said that 4x plus 2x minus 6 is equal to 180 because supplementary means adds to 180. Okay, look at those two and see what questions you have for me. Okay, we're going to talk about the other two that we already have marked on your pink sheets. So we're going to talk about the other two you already have marked on your pink sheets, and that is diagonals bisect each other. So if you draw the diagonals in, I'm going to call this X. So AX is congruent to CX, and DX is congruent to BX. So the diagonals bisect each other. Each diagonal separates the parallelogram into two congruent triangles. And that's because of side, side, side. So we know opposite sides are congruent, and they share this. So ABD, so triangle ABD is congruent to triangle CDB. Opposite sides are congruent. So triangle ABC is congruent to triangle CDA. Yep. So we're saying that this triangle here is the same as this triangle here. And if I go the other diagonal, that these two triangles are congruent because of side, side, side. Okay, so let's use this. Find the value of each of the variables in this parallelogram. So Dylan Keith, choose a variable and tell me how you're going to find it. How will you find R?
Since 4R which equals
Good. So we know opposite sides are congruent. So as Dylan said, 4R is the same as 20 because those are our opposite sides. If we divide by 4, R is 5. Madison, we have K and M. Which one do you want to help me with? We have to find K and we have to find M. Which one do you want to help me find? Okay, how do I know? What do I know about M? How can I find that? It does not equal to 180. It's not an angle. They're two segments. So, Alana, what do you know? Because, what did we just learn on the previous slide, guys? The diagonals bisect each other. So those are congruent, okay, guys? And these are all new to you guys. Just like I said last week with the trapezoids, it takes a while to get used to them. You're going to have to study them and separate them now that you know trapezoids and parallelograms. It's a lot. So diagonals bisect each other. And this is to find M. So we say 8M equals 7M plus 3. Okay, 2K is going to be the harder one to find that K. Does anybody think they know how to figure that one out? Nick?
Isn't it equal or congruent to angle 18 on the other side?
It's not 18, but it's close to one of those ones.
Well, I know, but since it's 2K, you can assume that if you divide it by 2.
It's not the 18, though. It's the other one that's right there. It's equal to the 40. And that's because of, let me show you guys why. So we know that opposite sides are congruent. They're also parallel. When we were way back in the beginning of the school year, we would talk about a transversal and we would look for specific type of angles. One of those angles that we used a ton in proofs were what kind of angles? Alternate interior. 2K and angle 40 are alternate interior angles. And we know alternate interior angles are congruent. So we're using alternate interior angles, so 2K is the same as 40. So K is 20. Things are never going to leave you, are they? Saying side, side, side today, and alternate interior angles. All right, next one. It says solve to find each of the variables. I don't care which one you choose to do first, but Ayana, choose one. Let me just tell you where these angle measures and side lengths are. Okay. So what do you want to find first, Ayana? What do you know about Z? It's equal to what? Yep. They're alternate interiors. We just talked about that. So Z, remember, opposite sides are parallel. So we have our transversal. So Z and 43 are the same because they are alternate interior angles. Jordan, what one do you want to find?
Y.
Okay, what do you know? How do you find Y?
2y divided by 5 is congruent to 17.
I think that's supposed to be an addition sign. Hello. It does look like a divided by sign, though. But what did you say? It is congruent to what?
17.9.
Yes. So opposite sides are congruent. So 2y plus 5 equals 17.9. Yeah.
Can I solve for W?
Yeah, how do you find W?
Consecutive angles, whatever. 100.
They're equal to 180, but we don't really have consecutive angles because this isn't the whole entire angle. You see that? See how it's just the piece of it?
The 100's just the piece too.
Yeah, but that's not this angle here. This is the consecutive one. Like, not consecutive, sorry. These would be consecutive. This is not part of the parallelogram. This is inside of the parallelogram. You have to be careful there. For it to be a consecutive angle, it has to be the whole angle, like without all these lines in between. Like these two here are consecutive. Okay, what do I know with this 100 though? What is formed here? A linear pair. So what would this angle be here then? Good. What shape do you see inside of this parallelogram? I see a triangle as well. How many degrees are in a triangle? So this triangle here is going to help us out. So triangles. We're saying a triangle equals 180, right? So we have the measure of angle W plus 43 plus 80 equals 180. Is it 47? Did I do that right, huh? 57, that's what I thought. I was like, that doesn't look right. Alright, so we only have one more variable to find, and that is t. Cole, how can I find t? Yeah, we know that the diagonals bisect each other. I do not know what 14.1 divided by 4 is. 3.524. All right, are there questions on that one? Again, you're going to have to separate the properties of a trapezoid, an isosceles trapezoid, and a parallelogram. You're going to have a quiz on Wednesday over parallelogram stuff. And on that quiz, it will still include trapezoid stuff, so you still need to know that.
That's not good.
I know. EFGH is a parallelogram. Remember, when you label it, you need to go in a circle. So E to F, F to G, G to H. We're going to find the measure of GH if EF is 2x plus 15 and GH is 10x minus 1. Brandon Beeman, when you're done drawing it, you're going to help me out. What do you know about opposite sides? So what can you do? Good. So we have 2x plus 15 equals 10x minus 1. So I get x equals 2. But does it ask us for x? What does it ask us for? So we get to substitute that in for GH. Good. You okay? All right, guys, one last problem, and then I'll get you guys your homework and get your quizzes back to you. All right, so in parallelogram A, B, C, D, angle B is 3x plus 32, and angle C is 9x minus 8. Find the measure of angle A. The measure of angle A is the same as the measure of angle. So we know that these two are the same, so if we know what C is, we know what A is. Bryce, how can I find this? Good. Consecutive angles are supplementary. So now we just substitute back in for C because that's the same as A. So the measure of angle C is 109. Or I'm sorry, the measure of angle A is what we wanted there. All right.